Welcome to Kare's second video on this channel and a tutorial on all the knitting basics you'll need to know. So first off, just to introduce myself, I'm Faith and I'm the Associate Director here at Care Art Organization. And so what exactly is knitting? Well, knitting is the process of making fabric with yarn, if you didn't know already, and it's through the usage of one or two or more needles. First off, as I showed before, these are straight needles, the classic kind that you're thinking of when you think of knitting, and so that makes flat knitting. Flat knitting is when you're using two needles, or technically it can be one, but more or less two needles, and you're making a flat piece, and you can see it right here. However, if you have double point needles, they have on the other end, they also have the same point. And so again, double point needles, double-sided needles, whatever you want to call that, that's what you can use to do round knitting. Another process that you can use, and this is through the usage of one needle, you can do round knitting and flat knitting through circle needles. You can see it here, there's usually a wire at the end, and technically it's one needle, but you can still do the process of flat knitting, and then you can also connect it in round. So first off, I'm going to be using these really big needles. I forget what size 11. So size 11 you really would not be using with this type of thickness or weight. There's a bunch of different numbers. I can put it up right now. Then there's corresponding needle lengths, but I'm just using bigger needles right now to show you, and so it's kind of easier for you to see what I'm doing. So yeah, this is a skein. Usually when you have the skeins, there'll be at least one thread from the middle, which you can see here. Easiest to pull, you just pull from the inside. As long as you find that, you might have to do look through to find it, but this one already has it. And so to start off, we're going to take our needles. You'll take one actually. I'll put it somewhere where it doesn't roll. And so first thing you'll need to know is basically a slip knot. You have your thread here. I usually like to hold it like this. So you wrap it around once. Sorry, I'm just going. And then you take it off your finger. So it should be like this, just like a loop. Take the other end, your thread connected to the rest of the skein is here, and then you put it through. And then you have a knot. You can just insert your needle and then pull, and then there you go. You have, sorry, a knot right there, and then you have it. And so this is an example of how to do the slip knot, but when you're casting on, you have a tail, right? So this is your tail. It's this part that's not connected to your yarn anymore. And then you have, sorry, my hand. And then you have the part that is connected to your yarn. And so usually you would call this the working thread because it's connected to your yarn. And then this is just your tail. For your tail, you want it to be of moderate length because later on you'll weave it in. And the idea of weaving it in, it means you need enough thread so you're able to put a needle in and hide the thread, if that makes sense. So just make it of moderate length. Some people recommend 6 inches. I think that's too much. Depends on your project. And so the method of cast on that we're using is called the long tail cast on. It's a pretty easy method. Most people know it, and for the most part it'll help you in the basics, and then you can learn other cast on methods. You have your tail end here and your working thread here. When you pull on your slip knot, it should be kind of loose. You're casting on all your starting stitches, and so this is your base, It can be an even amount, it can be an odd amount, but know that when you're counting in patterns, you always count the slip knot. When you're casting on, you're in just knitting in general, you're always going to be using your working thread. So kind of like put your tail end to the side in one hand. You're going to loop it like this. So the yarn end is here on my bottom, and then the top part is here. Take your pointer finger, pull kind of like this, kind of pulling for that tension. And you want it to be kind of tight because you're going to take this needle and then put it under your thread and then let go and pull. And so you can see here what it looks like. And so you want it to be somewhat loose. People kind of have the problem of making their cast-ons a little too tight. And so you can count based on the lines here or the bumps here, whichever is easiest for you. Now that you've successfully cast on, I'm going to teach you about a little bit about tensioning. So you have your other needle. This needle in your right hand goes on your left. From your starting point, you have it here. Your tail is on this end on the right. Turn it over, your tail is going to be on your left end. And so you can just hold that in your hand. Usually I hold it like this. And so you have your other knitting needle. I would do the same thing. Pointer here, finger here. Hands are going this way. But you'll see later that I'll fix it. And so first, you just want to insert your right hand needle into that first thread. And so, if you can see here, I'm going to go closer. This is your first thread. You want to insert your needle in here. This loose end, not the bottom end, but just this loose end. And you're going from left to right, like that. So you have your working thread at the back. And now I'm going to teach you tensioning. So this is very complicated. Tensioning is something that like everyone needs to play around with. I'll show you mine. There are a few ways of holding it. And so there's the English and British method where your tensioning is with your right hand. And so that's slower. And the idea is you're throwing the thread over. And then there's tensioning with your left hand, which is a continental method, which is usually a lot faster because you're holding it in your left hand, and so it's usually like a tensioning like this, except better. I don't continental stitch and knit, unfortunately, but it is a little harder to learn, and so I'll just teach you guys the English or British method. And so tensioning just makes sure your fabric is very even and it's not like wobbly and all over the place. And how you do that is by a bunch of different methods, but it's wrapping it around your finger in a few different ways. And so the one I usually do is, I'll just show it. You loop it around your pinky kind of like 2 times, and then I weave it in between my fingers like this, and I just pull down as long as you have it somewhat tight. And so you're making it kind of even. Now we can actually do a knit stitch, and so this is the most basic stitch and you can build off of it afterwards. And so the idea is you're putting the needle right, left, right, and then from the front of the needle to the back of the needle, as you can see here. What you do with your working thread in your other hand with tension, the idea is you're kind of like, you can hold your stitch here, and then you're pulling it over, if that makes sense. So you're wrapping it around your back needle, or your needle in your right hand. So you have this. This is my working thread, wrapping it around and putting it in the middle. So it's kind of like tense there. And once you put it in between, you can take your needle. This is a little hard part. And there's a little like string you've made now. You're gonna catch your the string that you just put over, because remember you wrapped it around like this, and then there's that string, if you can see it right there. And the idea is you want to put your needle down, insert it in, so it's like that. Okay, I'll show you that again. Throw your working thread over and in between, and then push down to get that working thread again in between. And then afterwards, you're just going to pull it off and tighten. And then you have your first knit stitch. It's a little hard to get used to, and that's why you want to keep your first stitches kind of loose so you can get it. And that's also why they say the first row after you cast on is usually the hardest to knit. And then at the end of the row, you do the same thing. You just do all that for your end. And then you'll have your first row done. For now, you'll just repeat the same process on the next row. We can cast off using the French method, and this is also an easy cast off method, but there's a bunch of other methods that you could use later on. You're kind of more or less like stitching again, and so first you're going to make one more stitch on this row, and then you're going to make another stitch. Actually, I lied. 2 more knit stitches, and the idea is you want to slip one of these stitches over the other. So it's a little hard to see, but you're going to slip this needle in between like that. I'll show it. 2, slip it in between, pull on this thread, and then take it over. And then you're just going to do that for the rest of your row. Once you get to your last stitch, you want to cut your next end. So like the tail, you want to leave a bit of inches just so you can weave it in. I did 3 or 4 inches. You take your tail end, insert it into the loop. So you'll see that the tail end is like this, and if I pull, it will unravel the whole thing, which we don't want to do. So instead, you're going to take this tail end, insert it into this loop other way, and pull. At the end of all the pieces, the idea is you take the thread and a needle and weave it through these stitches, if you can see, to basically hide the fact that you had these loose ends. But thank you all for sticking with me through knitting basics. And if you're ever interested, you can always check out our website and more about care below. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.